So just to introduce our speakers for tonight and the network, just wanted to say that my name is Tate Kiliho Malu, and I'm the coordinator with Maui Nui Makai Network. And I'll introduce our speakers. We have Chair Violet Sagewalker, and then Gianna Patchen and Mike Khus-Zarate. And just to give them a brief introduction, Violet Sagewalker of the Northern Chumash Tribal Council is a nominator of the proposed Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary, which they're going to be sharing more about tonight, and you'll hear more. And she has over 35 years of experience in cultural resource management, along with a decade in marine sanctuary campaigns. And Chair Walker has many roles through her family's longstanding legacy of protecting natural and cultural resources, which I know we have people in the room tonight similar to the fight like that. And so we are so blessed to be able to have that privilege to hear from you folks. And then we also have Miss Gianna Patchen, who is the executive assistant for the Northern Chumash Tribal Council and their proposed Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary campaign. And so she joined the sanctuary campaign back in 2021 and has a background in ecology, environmental communications, and supports the Northern Chumash Tribal Council throughout their work. And then they're going to introduce, but we have Mr. Mike Khus-Zarate, who's the elder of the Bear Clan and a member of the coastal band of the Chumash Nation. And he is also a retired teacher and documenting the revitalization of the Brotherhood of the Tomol, which we'll be able to hear more about tonight. So I will stop talking and I will hand it over to our speakers this evening. So here you are.
Hachu. Hello, my name is Violet Sagewalker, and I'm happy to be with you here tonight. And it is pitch black here, so we're coming to you from the other side of the coast. And so forgive me if I'm a little bit tired, but it's been a long day. But I'm just really happy. As soon as I hear Hawaiian music, I get happy, and I think about going on vacation to come see all of you. So I'm really looking forward to being able to be a guest and being able to exchange our ideas and cultures in person. I found out about the network with Uncle Saul, and we've been traveling a lot of the same pathways over the last few years. And so most recently, we were at Impact 5. Previously, we were at the U.S. and Chile International Indigenous convening up in Washington State. And I do know some people on the call, so hello to people I know, and thank you for taking the time, to come and hear our story. And I think that's what we're all here, that we all share, is we all like to tell stories. And some pretty great elaborate stories, and that's how our culture is all connected, is through our storytelling. And that's what makes our places so special, is because of our music and our food and our people, our culture, our stories. And so that is I think when our marine sanctuary, the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary, we've been working on this for a long time, and when it finally becomes designated, I always tell people that one day people will think about the Chumash people like they know about like Hawaiian people, and and it's very few people know about our culture and our communities and our songs and our stories and our language, and they don't want to stereotype indigenous people from the mainland, thinking that we all like live in teepees and chase buffalo and things like this, just the same way we don't want to stereotype people from island communities. And we know how individual and unique and different, and how many different cultures are in Hawaii and other places like Palau and other Pacific Islander countries. And so one of the things that I'm the most excited about is being able to create this web of Indigenous allies and sister sanctuaries and people working together in the marine protected spaces. I'm gonna take a wild leap and say that one of my favorite parts of this journey for the past 10 years has been just being able to connect with other people, other Indigenous people, and sharing our same stories and the same struggles in different languages and with different songs and with slightly different, vocabularies and different customs, but the same, like whether or not we speak the same language or not, we're saying the same things. And just having that connection, being able to understand how people feel from across the globe, and being able to share the struggles that we're facing. And, Indigenous people are, we've been tasked to solve some of these like global climate change problems for the rest of the world. And we've always been the ones that are, hit worse on the front lines with climate change and natural disasters and the possibility of losing our sacred sites. Not only do we lose our sacred sites to climate change and disasters and the possibility of sea level rising, but also when these really supposedly great ideas of mass industrialization of our oceans and this illegal and unregulated fishing and all these things that have to do with issues that we face, missing and murdered Indigenous women and human trafficking. Our people are hit first and affected the most, and also fight the hardest. And so the passion that we protect our places with and our homeland with is something that I am always constantly in admiration of. And I see that in all of our faces, everybody's face here, everybody that stays up in the middle of the night to have a Zoom call and talk about, cultural exchange, every one of you is the warriors, and I'm sure you're all doing really great work. But I just like to be a part of that. And that's what this is the best part of the journey, nominating the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary is extending our network of Indigenous allies around the world. And thanks to Uncle Saul, hopefully we will see you all in person and get to learn about all of the things that everyone's doing, get to share our stories and our connections, because a lot of our stories are the same, and sometimes they sound the same too. Some of our songs sound the same, and I always think about this, the hukalea and the tribal journeys, and people paddling around the world and up and down the coast. And I think, of course, we're related. Of course, we've been exchanging knowledge and information long before the internet. And sometimes I think about our people and the Hawaiian people going back to the more recent history of the invasion of like Spain and the Portuguese and different invasions that happened in California. California had a tradition of the California vaqueros here on the coast, and I know a lot of our people ended up, in Hawaii on these ranches and working cattle and like riding horses. And so like I think about the exchange not just happening in like it happened 100 years ago or 500 years ago, but it happened 5,000 years ago too. And so I'm really looking forward to learning more about our similar experiences. And I just have to say, a lot of my good ideas came from Hawaii management plans. So I have no shame in like taking a lot of my ideas from the management plan of the Papahan Mauna Kea and some of these other great documents with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, and this idea of co-management with NOAA and collaborative management. And so one of the things that we've done is we've nominated the sanctuary. We are a non-federally recognized tribe. We've never had any federal or state funding. So we've done this all with grassroots money and small donations. We've had over 30,000 people support us in public comments on the Federal Register, which is really unheard of. And we would like to just, be able to share how we got to where we are today. And there's some things that we've been able to do and that we've been really successful at. And we don't want people to have to reinvent the wheel either. And so these kind of exchanges save people time and energy and effort also, and give people really like great ideas. And you can take or leave, all the things that work and the things that wouldn't work. But definitely one of my passions will be after the Marine Sanctuary is nominated is to be able to help other people with marine protection, because it's, there's a lot of people working on, land conservation, but marine protection is so underfunded and under-resourced, and equally important, if not more important, to the safety of our entire world and our homeland specifically. But working in marine protection is something that is definitely a labor of love, because I'm the third generation to do this, and I'm hoping I will be the one that sees it finally designated into a better protection. But also it would be nice if we could get some this work takes so long, and it takes so much commitment, and our people are often doing the work for free, and we're often doing the work over generations. And so we have to also like take some time to really enjoy the work we're doing by like these exchanges and by meeting people and having fun. And so that was one thing that my dad always said, is that he's not going to do it if it's not fun. So I just want to put that out there, that like we have to like remember why we do this, and gather and sing and eat together and share stories together and build these relationships. And I'm not sure how much time I have, but I think I'm going to let Gianna talk for a little while, and then we can come back if we have some questions and things later.
Perfect. Thank you, Violet, for sharing all of that. And I'm actually going to let Mike talk ahead of me, Elder Mike Khus-Zarate, who Tate wonderfully introduced us to earlier on this call, but he is a retired teacher, as well as documenting the revitalization of the Brotherhood of the Tomol, and a wonderful leader in making sure that even recent history isn't lost. So I will let you go ahead, Mike, and start sharing your slides.
Yes, thank you so much, Gianna. And I am very pleased to be here tonight and to share company with such wonderful people, especially from Hawaii. I'm a teacher. I used to teach history, and I have to admit, history kind of caught up to me a bit as I noticed more and more gray hairs popping out. And I realized not too long ago that I had better get busy, recording the history that has taken place in more recent times. Otherwise, it won't be there for the coming generations. And so that's one of the projects that I've been focused on, is documenting, bringing together, making it accessible to people, our stories, and especially the story, in particular the one I'm going to be talking about tonight, is the maritime culture of our Chumash people and the Brotherhood of Tomol. So forgive me, but I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit, because I want to make sure I do it right. And this is I'm going to start with a quotation by a man named Saktele, who was a leading Tomol builder. Tomol was our seagoing plank boat from the Ventura area, just south of Santa Barbara. And he spoke at the end of the Brotherhood of the Tomol, because the story that I'm going to share with you tonight is a story about death and revival. And when he lived during the Spanish colonial era of California, he was speaking after a great disaster when we had lost something like 20 Tomols in the Santa Barbara Channel that went out into a storm, and all 20 or so Tomols were lost and their crew, and only a few survived. So this is that's the context for this quotation. Quote, now is the end, for there is no one else who will build a Tomol. They are all dead. Those brave men who navigated the sea. I say clearly that the time has come when the canoe brotherhood has ended. Do not hope that the brotherhood will return again, for it will not. It is over. Unquote. The Tomol is recognized as the most sophisticated and technically advanced watercraft ever built by indigenous people in North America. Only the Chumash and their southern neighbors, the Tongva or Gabaliano, as it's sometimes called, and the Pacific Islanders from the Gilbert Islands ever built this type of seagoing craft. There is some discussion about the term Tomol and what it means, but it's most likely that it refers to the unique manner that these boats were built. Adding or stacking planks from the keel or the bottom board upwards. In other words, building from the bottom up. That's what the word, the Tomol means upwards, or to add to. So the planks were being added from the keel and the bottom boards up, instead of the other way around, where modern boats tend to be, flipped upside down, and the keel or the bottom boards are on top, and people build their boats from the top down. So that's the term Tomol, what it most likely means. The preferred construction material was seasoned redwood driftwood called Wima that was carried southward on the current from the northwest, eventually landing on the Santa Barbara Channel Islands. Rot and worm resistant and capable of being hewn into wide planks, the redwood collected on the beach, and it was lightweight and perfectly suited for Tomol building. During the using the heart of a tule plant, which grows in our grassland in our wetlands, the tule plant heart was used by the Tomol builders for caulking the spaces between the planks and to make a twine that would bind the planks together. Yop, W-O-P, yop was a mixture of pine pitch, tar, red ochre, and used as a sort of epoxy to cement planks and waterproof the crevices and knotholes. Tomol is varied in size, from 8 to 30 feet long, and were used for fishing and transportation, cruising the coastal waters of South Central California and perhaps beyond. Now, not unlike other indigenous peoples with specialized roles in the community, the skill holders that built and crewed the Chumash Tomols formed a select society called the Brotherhood of the Tomol. Deep sea fishing, long distance maritime travel empowered and enriched the Brotherhood until the Spanish invasion and colonial occupation disrupted everything. The remnants of the Brotherhood, represented by such men as Septele, continued under the direction of Spanish priests, but disasters at sea and impoverishment finally led to the end of the society. A few more Tomols were built by individuals, the last one in the 1870s, but the Brotherhood had died. Then, in the 1970s, while America made ready for its 200th birthday, the local Chumash community awakened and inspired by the civil rights movement, the Latino farm workers movement, the American Indian movement, and they did something pretty remarkable. A resurrected Brotherhood built another seagoing Tomol. Hilik, which means falcon or hawk, would take to the sea, and its spirit would energize a momentous revival. Next slide, please. The only surviving information about Tomol building were in the field notes from the famous linguist John P. Harrington, who had consulted with Khus-Zarate, whose picture you see here on the screen, during the period 1913-1914. Harrington, for those of you who are not familiar with him, was a linguist, ethnologist who traveled around the mainland and collected most of the linguistic, but a lot of ethnographic information about various tribes throughout the country. His favorite, as many of us of the Chumash nation like to point out, were the Chumash people. And he spent a lot of time talking to the remaining elders that could still speak the language and knew something of the culture. And a lot of that information was recorded in his field notes. Khus-Zarate, who was a very elderly man by the time Harrington got around to him, was one of his favorite consultants. Recalling from memory his contacts with the old Tomol builders back in the 1840s and 50s, Khus-Zarate, this man, had provided Harrington with remarkably detailed technical descriptions of Tomol construction, as well as information about the fabled Brotherhood. However, it was not so easy to read or understand Harrington's Tomol notes, or any of his notes for that matter. Anybody that's familiar with J.P. Harrington and his field notes realize that they were disorganized, they were rambling, they jumped from topics often on the same page, they were written in English, Spanish, Chumash, they were a mess. And adding to this confusion and complexity, Khus-Zarate's measurements were expressed in finger lengths and palm spans and forearm lengths and the like. The Helix builders had to translate these into standard metrics. One of our elders, who wound up with helping, was instrumental in reviving the Brotherhood, a man named John Ruiz, who's shared a lot of this information with me, and I'm sharing with you tonight, recalls spending many hours poring over Harrington's notes, analyzing and interpreting Khus-Zarate's descriptions. But John Ruiz says he was lucky. Had Khus-Zarate not lived to be 111 years old, Harrington would not have captured his traditional knowledge, and Tomol building would have been probably lost to history. Next slide. These are photographs taken at the time when Harrington was consulting with Khus-Zarate. And the slide that's on the left-hand side there is a pretty good shot of Khus-Zarate. He, shared a lot of the material culture with Harrington. The photograph on the right, of course, you can see is where they had attempted to build a replica of a Tomol using, Khus-Zarate's instructions. This was not a seagoing Tomol, however. It wound up in the Museum of Man in San Diego. And it was constructed in San Bernardino, California. So it never even had a chance to get to see. But it was the first one that was first one that had been built at all in quite a number of years. Next slide, please. This is the Helix as it was being constructed in Santa Barbara, California in 1976. And John Ruiz, along with many of the members of the community, came together and came up with fundraised and came up with witherall to gather the materials. The materials were gathered off the beach near Vandenberg Air Force Base, along the just north of Hancock, one of our most sacred sites. And so the material was traditional, and as much as possible, the material was traditional as much as we could make it. one thing that was not done according to traditional is that as you can see here, the boat, the technical assistant that we had working with us by the name of a gentleman by the name of Pete Holworth, was familiar with making small craft, wooden small craft. This one was built in a more modern technique, where they flipped the construction upside down, and they built and the keel and the bottom boards are on top, and they add them later, going from top down. The old Tomols traditionally were built from the bottom up, as I said before. Next slide. And this is the photograph of the actual launching in 1976 on the beach in Santa Barbara. And the crew, whose members you see here, lifting the boat up, lifting Helic up off the beach in the sand and taking it into the surf. Was quite a moment. We had hundreds of people on the beach, people who had known they were Chumash, and their families knew that they were Chumash, but had never really made themselves known to the general community. Took pride, a great deal of pride in having this boat constructed and crewed by other Chumash people, and it was quite a moment. The next slide, please. And this is what Helic looks like when it's one of the few color photographs that we have with the crew on board in the harbor. I think this photograph was probably taken in Ventura. And here's another photo, a couple other photographs of Helic as they've taken the sea. You can see that in the what we call the ears of the Tomol, at the top of the bow, there's a ornamental artwork, because we the crew and the people, for us, the Tomol is a living spirit, and we want to make her look as beautiful as possible. Next slide, please. And these are some of the black and white photographs that were taken at the time. Do we have any other ones? Is that it? Are we done? Here we go. I should say to end my presentation tonight that the Chumash Maritime Association has built some Tomols since the Helic in 1976, and this is one of our Tomols that's navigating in Morro Bay, California. And when one of our Tomols takes to the water, they get a lot of admiring views, and a lot of love goes into our Tomols. So I thank you for giving me the time to share a little bit of this story with you tonight. And I hope on our trip to Hawaii that we'll be able to talk about it more. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike, for sharing all of that. And a perfect segue from Chumash maritime culture and the revitalization of the Tomol in the last century has also sparked some wonderful work in conservation and preserving the ocean that is home to the Tomol and to many people and many animals and organisms. So a large part of the Northern Chumash Tribal Council's work has been with the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary campaign. And that is how I have wonderfully gotten to be able to be involved with the Northern Chumash Tribal Council. My name is Gianna Patchen, and I am the assistant for the Tribal Council and the Sanctuary campaign. So I have wonderfully been able to be part of the Sanctuary campaign and here on the Central Coast of California. And I will be sharing some slides as well. So the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary is still a proposed sanctuary, and the most front-facing part of the Northern Chumash Tribal Council's work on a global scale, but really only a segment of the wonderful work that the Tribal Council is working on here on the Central Coast of California. But this is the project that you have most likely heard of before today, and if not, you will get to hear about it. And first, we will be hearing it from no one better than Violet herself in this video. And let me know, Tate, if there's any sound issues, but it should be good.
We're standing in front of part of what would be the proposed Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary. It would close the gap between the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary and the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary and ban offshore oil, natural gas extraction, seismic testing, and pollution off the waters of our coasts. This is the first tribally led nominated marine sanctuary put forth by a coalition of like-minded NGOs, environmental activists, and tribal communities.
The Chumash have been the stewards and guardians since time immemorial, by Western archaeology approximately 20,000 years. The amazing thing about this movement is that we have come from a very small, under-resourced community, grassroots movement, and we had been working hand in hand with the Chumash tribe.
The Chumash people are ocean-going people. We lived by the ocean. It sustained us through food and through trade and through ceremony. One of our sacred places here for the Chumash people is what we call Li'isa Mu, and that's Moral Rock. It's one of the sacred places for our people to journey, to pray for solstice ceremony, for winter and summer solstice ceremony.
This is part of the California Current, which starts up in Alaska and then comes all the way down to Baja, Mexico. That current carries the food web that we rely on. And with this big open space that does not have National Marine Sanctuary designation and protection, it's a big hole where so many things could go wrong.
If the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary is designated, it would provide increased protection for some of our most significant keystone species. The southern sea otter, which makes its home over by Moral Rock, is one of the main species that will benefit from the sanctuary. All the whales, all the marine invertebrates. You'll see the great pelicans here. You'll see the snowy egrets and the blue herons.
In this area that we're trying to get designated, we are seeing the impacts of global climate change in temperature rising, sea level rising, and the ocean acidification in particular is being found at 2 times the amount of the world's oceans. This is a project that brings together inclusion, environmental justice, indigenous communities, and underserved communities. It's powerful.
Some of our elders have spent their whole life trying to protect the coastline, trying to protect the sacred sites. We would say that our ancestors are always with us. They're in the ocean, they're in the water, they're in the air we breathe, they're in the sea, they're in the sparkles on the water.
Thank you. And again, no one better to say that than Violet and PJ, and really sharing the breadth of the sanctuary campaign. And I will be diving a bit more into the details of the sanctuary itself. Here you can see the boundaries of the proposed sanctuary. This spans 156 miles of coastline and over 7,000 square miles of ocean. So an absolutely huge part of the California Current and of our California coast here. And you can see along the proposed boundaries are the Santa Lucia Banks boundaries. And this is particularly purposeful to have this extend so far out to include these banks that hold old sites for Chumash village sites. Since time immemorial, the Chumash peoples have lived on the Central Coast of California. And so there are sites that were once home to people thousands of years ago when the coastline was further out. So all along here are many sites, many of which have not really been discovered or studied or looked at. As well as on this coastline is some really important biodiversity here. And the extent of connecting the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary to the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary to the south of us is really important for contiguous protection of our oceans. As we all know, the ocean is not something where hard boundaries can keep pollutants from spreading, not a place where hard boundaries keep whales from migrating through. This is all interconnected. So it is important that we treat all aspects of our coastline with that respect and protection, because anything that happens here will spread north, south, west. It will all be influenced. And the sanctuary's waters hold essential connection to Chumash heritage, and the Chumash peoples have been stewards of this land since time immemorial, and the integral interconnectedness of culture and ecosystem of water, air, and land cannot be separated in any of the work that's done. And this coastline also holds immense biodiversity importance. You can see on the right-hand side here, this spot on the Central Coast is where the warm northern waters meet the cold southern waters. So we are at a place where there is biodiversity not seen to this extent on anywhere else on the Central Coast. Migratory animals pass through here, but it's also a place where northern species and southern species cross over in their ranges. So there is an abundance here that really is special and is at risk. We are seeing ocean acidification at 2 times the global rate here on the Central Coast. And we are particularly vulnerable to the potential expansion of offshore oil on the Central Coast here, and how detrimental that will be where these 2 currents collide. Any potential for pollution here and disrespect of these resources can impact migratory systems that go all the way north to Alaska and south past Mexico. So anything that happens here will impact beyond just the boundaries of the Central Coast. And so what will the Chumash Sanctuary do? I'll keep this short so that we have time for questions. But the most integral part of this that hasn't been seen on this scale before is having tribal collaborative management in the waters on the Central Coast. And this means that the Northern Chumash Tribal Council, who are the nominators of the sanctuary, will get to be part of that collaborative management, but it will also extend to all Central Coast tribes who choose to be part of this process. It'll ban harmful practices, so offshore oil drilling, any really intense development of the Central Coast. So that also means seismic testing and toxic waste dumping would also be banned in the sanctuary waters here. And it'll boost the economy. There was a study done in 2014 that showed the sanctuary would bring an estimated minimum of $23 million and 600 new jobs to the Central Coast. And that was back in 2014. So newer studies are suggesting that there will be even more of a positive impact on the local economy here on the Central Coast. And it will also incorporate stakeholder input. So currently, our waters are already regulated on a state and federal level, but do not have the incorporation of local stakeholder input into many of the decisions that are happening. So a sanctuary makes that necessary, makes an advisory council an integral part of any management decisions. And really, local knowledge is the only thing that can make those management decisions accurate and long-lasting, because decisions can be made, but if they are not able to stand the test of time, then they aren't helping as much as we would hope they would. And a sanctuary will also bring research and education. So increased funding for pay through PhD level education here. And the Central Coast waters are some of the most understudied waters on the California coast. So there is ample opportunity to study the impacts on this essential ecosystems on the Central Coast here of human impacts, the impacts of climate change, and to really understand what's happening now. So for long-term decisions, we can have a reference database to go back to. And it's been a long timeline to get the sanctuary where it is today. You do not need to look at all of these dates, but since the 70s and 80s, there have been many efforts to get the Central Coast to have a national marine sanctuary. And finally, in 2015, the Chumash Sanctuary nomination was accepted by NOAA. And in 2020, as it sat in inventory, there was a 5-year review with over 14,000 public comments and 99% of which in support. So despite this long timeline, we have been able to maintain extensive support for the sanctuary campaign here on the Central Coast. And in 2021, fall of 2021, the exciting news that the Chumash Sanctuary campaign would be moved into the designation process was announced. And this opened a public scoping period where we had even more turnout and support, with over 22,000 written comments that represented over 30,000 people, and over 99% of them were in support of the sanctuary campaign. We were so excited to see that the community's support of the sanctuary campaign has not dwindled over the years, has not dwindled since the pandemic. It remains strong. And this is my favorite graph in the whole world, because you can see the supportive comments versus the rest. And that blue bar graph is just really wonderful to see all of the community knowledge and the support across the globe that is going into this process. So what is next for the Chumash Sanctuary campaign? We had our public scoping process in late 2021, early 2022. And we are now in this phase where NOAA is preparing draft documents. So they have finally decided that the Chumash Sanctuary gets the investment of creating a draft proposal with the nitty-gritty details and options for what a sanctuary looks like in it. So we are awaiting those documents. And when they are released, we will be in our final and defining public comment period. So this next few months, this spring and summer, is the time to look out for the Chumash Sanctuary's name, sign up for our email list. And this will be the final time to really support the sanctuary campaign, as well as the time to have your knowledge and your input contributing to what this sanctuary will look like, because every sanctuary campaign is unique and is informed by the information that the community brings. And we have tapped into our global community, including you all, and your knowledge, your expertise is really, really valuable. As Violet said earlier, has been instrumental in informing the sanctuary's work here. And then once that public comment happens, the final documents go through. A lot of bureaucracy happens, some checks and balances, and hopefully by early 2024, we'll be seeing a sanctuary designation decision made. We really need to see this happen before the next presidential campaign cycle, so that it doesn't get put on hold any longer. So we're looking at this next year as our sprint marathon to the finish line, all hands on deck. And if you'd like more information, I recommend you check out our website, chumashsanctuary.org. If you scan the QR code, it'll take you there for some more information. And there you can sign up for our email list. I'll also put this in the chat. And that is going to be the best way to stay in the loop on how you can support the sanctuary campaign during this final leg. And I know we are over time for questions. I want to make sure all of our questions get to be answered, because I'm sure there will be some. So I will hand it back over to Tate to help with our question and answer session here at the end.
Thank you so much, Gianna. That was so awesome. I'm just feeling inspired, and I know we are so excited for you folks and home stretch. But yes, we will open it up for a Q&A. And so feel free to unmute or throw your questions in the chat. But yeah, anyone would like to start?
What do you folks determine right now as your most help needed in that area? I know the ocean acidification is what it is, because you're not the only one fighting that, right? So what seems to be your most help needed in this whole, not the process, but I guess the species or what it is that you folks are trying to develop?
Honestly, the biggest threat to the sanctuary is the industrialization that we're facing. And that doesn't just look like offshore oil anymore. Although 37 new offshore oil leases could potentially be developed in this area, it also looks like offshore wind. So, and having the sanctuary as a buffer, and I call it the safe passageway for the whales and the animals and the migratory species that need to travel from your place to our place and then back again. We need to ensure that that's a safe corridor, and that they we want to be one of the groups that are going to be doing the baseline monitoring, testing, and assessment for the next 40, 50, 60 years, and seeing how offshore wind is going to impact our animal friends in the ocean, because we are really the only ones speaking for them. I would say that's the biggest threat, is the industrialization, which includes the shipping lanes being moved. It includes ship speed reduction, things like that. It includes cabling. And I'm sure that these are issues that everybody's facing. So it's really good that we can talk about these kind of things together too.
Thank you. I know there is a comment and question in the chat by Lauren saying, beautiful story, thank you for sharing. Was there a specific turning point or points you can identify for when the administration finally moved the nomination to scoping?
I think that the turning point was just a new administration. So frankly, we were dead in the water for the previous administration for 4 years. We just sat there. Obviously underground, like building support and keeping the momentum and the community support alive, and that meant me going to meetings and staying up all night and going to city council meetings and just talking about it nonstop for the last 10 years. And and that's basically what we've done, is we've just showed up and we go everywhere and we almost never say no. And so it's taken a lot of work for the past 10 years to keep us in the front of people's minds. And people think that, we're already a marine sanctuary because we've been acting like we are for a long time. And we have a plan B, and hopefully there will not be a change in the administration. So I'm hoping that we don't have to implement plan B. So I know there's a couple more questions.
Go ahead, Ikolu.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation, and congratulations on all your success, and to keep on something like that is very difficult. I'm not quite can we help with letters of support? Would that help your cause? A bunch of us went up to Impact 5 as well. So I'm thinking a call out to the international community to send those letters of support would be appropriate. And supporting these sanctuaries is important for biodiversity and everything else that you said, but that food chain is super important. Now, I would suspect, are there commercial fishing is allowed within that area, but as you pursue the sanctuary designation, then does that mean fishing gets pushed out? And so those would be some of the people that would be pushing against the efforts, is that correct?
So in the national marine sanctuaries, fishing is still allowed. So they differ from marine protected areas. So some people interchangeably use marine protection and national marine sanctuaries. So I just want to make sure that we don't, because it's a really hot button topic. National marine sanctuaries still allow commercial fishing. And in fact, the commercial fishing inside the national marine sanctuaries is actually better than on the neighboring waters that are not protected. So we would really appreciate everybody on this call just signing up with their email. We're going to start sending out email blasts with instructions on how to make federal comments. You could do sign-on letters with groups, but you could submit your federal comments independently. And it can be just in support of, or it can be backed by your agencies that you work for, communities that you're involved with, or scientific research and data. For instance, if you were involved in like turtle migration, you know, the leatherback turtles come through here. And so stuff like that you're passionate about, please comment on. The humpback whales are an easy thing. Everybody, you know, that's really important to a lot of different people and communities. But we will come to Hawaii and teach you how to make federal comments. So we will offer free training while we were there. But that is what we need, is we will ask everybody that's a friend of us and everybody that's a friend of, you know, all the plants and animals and species in the ocean to just make a comment on their behalf, because the things that we're facing are huge, and we definitely want this to happen in this administration. But thank you for asking that.
And I would just like to add, you know, that the ocean we're protecting is all of ours, right? It's not, as we kind of talked about today, right? Like we all know it's interconnected. And in the public comments that we'll definitely be reaching out to you to ask you to write, thank you. You know, that's something that can totally be emphasized, right? There's no national boundaries that influence who does or doesn't get impacted by what happens to our ocean. And also the knowledge and expertise that you all and your networks hold is so valuable, even if it's research being done on Hawaiian Islands, right? Like the knowledge that you all hold is still so valuable and can still be utilized to inform this sanctuary campaign effort. So, you know, even if you're thinking what you're working on may not be directly connected, sharing a bit about what you've learned and maybe even some of the research and scientists you're connected with, but also, you know, cultural knowledge and traditional ecological knowledge is also valuable. So I just want to emphasize, you know, don't hesitate to share the abundance of knowledge that you all hold in this process with NOAA as well. Because like Violet said earlier, she's been looking at a lot of the work that y'all have been doing on the Hawaiian Islands for a while now, and it has inspired a lot of the ideas that have brought the Sanctuary campaign to where it is today. So it would be great to get all of your knowledge from the sources, and really thank you for being so supportive of this work as well.
And one more thing, I know we're at time, but I just want to say that our elder, who Mike talked about earlier, who built the Halik, our elder Slow was the recipient of the 1995 paddle from the Hukalea journey when you landed here in Santa Barbara. And he is going to come back to the island, and he wants to bring the Hukalea paddle with him. And that was almost 20 years ago. If I can do my math, almost 20 years ago, or is that longer than 20 years ago? He's going to be bringing the Hukalea paddle to the islands with him when we come over and visit in May. And so it's a coming full circle. And it's an interesting story about what Mike was talking about, that both the Hukalea and the Halik, they were both reimagined and recreated from visions from people and from paintings and from stories and from drawings and from recordings of people that had passed. And they were both recreated around the same time and long before we had cell phones. So I just think that that's a really interesting connection that you all like should know, that you know, this all happened about the same time. And thank you for staying up with us. I know it's not as late there, but it's late here.
Thank you folks for sharing, and we appreciate you folks staying up with us because we still see some light over here. But wow, that was really awesome to hear. Definitely a full circle. And for those of you who don't know, we will be having an exchange here on Maui, being able to host some of the Chumash tribal members here on the east side. But before we close up, does anyone else want to just say anything, or a last minute quick question? Anything?
I'm just going to throw something out there for Mike. Mike, it's pretty cool that you guys launched that canoe in '76. Maui also launched their double hull sailing canoe in 1976 around the same time. So that's pretty awesome to hear that these things were happening at the same. Amazing.
I don't know whether people realize or not, but there are a lot of historical records of Hawaiians here in California around the late 1700s, early 1800s, and I suspect that our relations go back quite a ways, even perhaps before then. Violet mentioned one of our elders, Slow Gutierrez, who was one of the original surviving crew members of Halik, and he's very excited about returning to Hawaii and spending time with all of you good folks, and looking forward to sharing more and learning more too. There's a terrific amount of dynamic energy that is generated when we do these kinds of sharings, whether they're here on Zoom, even if for just a few minutes, or when we do these person-to-person gatherings. And so who knows what might come out of these. There's going to be a lot of creative energy, a lot of spiritual energy, a lot of things that will erupt into might even break the political pain that sometimes keeps us down, and we'll be able to overcome some of the opposition that we face, because you're right, we do have opposition to the sanctuary, and the amount of noise and distraction that can be generated in this day and age with modern technology and social media and so forth is something we have to be aware of and to deal with. Our elders in the past had to deal with modern technology that was used against them, and we'll have to be on our guard to do the same. But I think that we have so many people with so many talents and so many capabilities now that we'll be fine. So and Violet says we'll have our sanctuary in another year or so. I believe it.
Mahalo.
I just want to mahalo Mike and Gianna and Violet. We so appreciate you folks this evening, and you talk about energy. I was very connected to the video. It said a lot, and we appreciate your time and sharing space, and we look forward to seeing you here shortly. Not quite 2 months, so
No,
mahalo.
We're already packing our bags. Mahalo, everyone.
All right, thank you so much for this evening. We will see you folks. Our next speaker series is going to be May 18th, so save the dates. And this video will be up shortly for those who missed. So other than that, he po malia, mahalo for your ike and your mana'o tonight, and ahui ho.